Well, good evening, patriots, freedom fighters throughout Saskatchewan, across the country, and around the world. Welcome to another riveting installment of, do we still call it Talking Night in Canada? I guess we do. How are we all doing tonight? Yes, it is frozen in Saskatoon. It was pretty chilly all day again today, and it looks like it's going to stay fairly chilly for at least the next few days, maybe a week. Thanks, Nancy. Nancy says good hair. Yeah, it's under control. I just had a tub, and it's all good. It's all under control and matted down where it needs to be matted down. Yeah. Where did Mark go? Well, I'm right here. I'm trying out some new technology. I've hooked in my other camera. Hopefully it works well. It seems to be working so far. So we'll see. Yeah, well, not so grizzly because I shaved this down a little bit. This is a little bit more ruly. And yeah, my hair is wet, so it's all managed. But if I don't do that, it's everywhere. So Facebook isn't joining us tonight. I got another ban on Facebook. So that's the way that goes. It's only 24 hours this time around, so whatever. We can deal with it. Just looking through. Tim Coolican says his pipes froze. The boy left the basement window open. Uh-oh. Did they burst, Tim? I hope not. Hopefully you get them thawed out before they do burst. That would really suck. So tonight, we have a couple of guests. The first guest is Greg Staley from Diverge Media. He's going to bring us a new story, some more information that he's found, and I'm going to let him explain what he's got. It's pretty interesting. And then we have the Angry Albertan, good old Josh over there in Alberta. Big fan. So without any further ado, yeah, thumbs up, subscribe, share, and if you guys are on Facebook, do me a favor and share this to Facebook from YouTube. So if people are on Facebook that want to watch, and usually watch from my 4 platforms there, they can do that. So share it out on Facebook, please. They even got my other one, my friends' Facebook, Canada First. So I can't even go live there at the moment. So I need you guys to share it out. Anyways, without further ado, let's bring in Greg Staley from Diverge Media and see what Greg's got cooking.
Hey, how are you, Mike?
I'm good. How are you, my friend?
I'm good. Yeah, it's a precarious position you get put in with the bans. What did they get you for this time?
Something I did back in December, I guess.
There's a guy in the U.S. I followed that he was saying they're coming after him for stuff that's like a year or two old.
Yeah, well, when that happens, it usually means that somebody's reporting you. Somebody else is going through your stuff and trying to find things that they can report you on. That's what I'm finding is happening. And even with YouTube, they've tried that as well. Yeah, so it's definitely a coordinated effort. That's for sure.
Yeah, it's definitely a pain in the rear end, but I'm trying to build around. I know you got a bunch of the alternative platforms. I'm trying to figure out how to. I just keep thinking that the ban's going to come one day, and I'm trying to figure out how to plan for it now, and figuring out the alternative media role. Because I'm still trying to get on Gap, so I don't know about you, but I can't even get on it now.
Really, eh? Yeah, I'm on it. I don't use it much. It'll be there as a backup, when and if I get turfed completely from Facebook and Twitter. And the other one is I'm really anxious for Odyssey to get their live stream option squared away, because I will funnel everybody there once they have a live stream, and probably just put up an intro up on YouTube and just drive everybody to Odyssey. I really like that platform. And it's just, again, it's I just got to wait for their live stream. But the other problem to this whole thing, moving to these other alternatives, is everybody has scattered, right? They're all scattered amongst all of these alternatives. And it would be nice to see one of these sort of, rise to the top as far as video platform, alternatively to YouTube, and then have somebody like Gab maybe rise to the top and be that option for Facebook. But because at the end of the day, I can talk to everybody in my echo chamber, and that echo chamber grows, slowly but surely it's growing, which is good. But, I want to hit outside the echo chamber. Now, of course, am I even able to do that on the mainstream social media platforms? I don't think so. I mean, the algorithms, they pretty much have us shut down to our echo chambers anyway. So, but there's a lot of people that, are stuck, and they'll just stay to the bitter end on Facebook, YouTube. So, we'll see how it goes. We gotta be able to adapt and be flexible. And, once Odyssey, for example, has their live stream option, then I guess I can look at it as, my way out, and not have to worry about YouTube. But we'll see.
Yeah, well, it's gotten so outrageous where they're coming after anyone. It's time to shift to something. And like I think you said, you nailed it. People need to just pick one. There needs to be just the alternative, and the scattering kind of, it defeats the purpose. That's the main thing. If there's one that can come along with organic reach for any of those social media replacements, they'll have a big impact and have a big piece of the market if they do it right over time. But
well, and it's, for us free marketers, that's it is what it is. It just takes a while. That's the problem with not being collectivists. That's the problem with not being group thinkers. We all like different things, and we all sort of, are attracted to different platforms, for example. So, it's hard in that sense because of who we are, right? So, and that goes along with protest and the movement itself. Us freedom fighters, us people that like independence and self-reliance and self-determination, it's hard to put us all under the same umbrella because we all are individuals and we sort of celebrate that individuality. And so that's not a bad thing. It's just we're at a disadvantage when it comes to, what the left brings. They're collectivists, they're group thinkers, they're a mob. They all think the same. And so they have the advantage in that sense. But I mean, at the end of the day, I always say we're going in the same direction. We're just on different paths, and sooner or later those paths will converge.
Oh, there's a lot more in common than I think divides us. The issue is the things that divide us sometimes are so intense and overwhelming that they're very difficult to overcome, and some may never be able to overcome. But so anyways, I came across a report today to transfer into kind of what I have for you tonight. There's something called newswire.ca. A lot of journalists and bloggers use it, but there was a release that said 8 trends shaping the future of work in a post-COVID Canada that caught my eye. It was provided by the Brookfield Institute for Innovation and Entrepreneurship. And I got halfway through it, and it said it was funded by the Government of Canada's Future Skills Center. So naturally, I took a little bit more attention, read through the release, and then went to the website and read the report itself. Under that website, on the report, it has 8. It says micro trends. I can't remember how it talked about them, but they were our lives online, capitalism in question, climate in crisis, reconciliation plus anti-racism, shifting power, evolving population, technology to the rescue, and even finding meaning and well-being in your life. So that was one of the things they went through. Again, this is a Government of Canada funded study. And so I'll give a couple points, and then we can bounce, talk about them if you'd like. But I had, where was it? America versus America. They talk about kind of foreign policy a little bit, and there's a spot in here where they're talking about, they acknowledge that there's going to be issues going forward with audit. So they expect there to be issues between us and America, it sounds like. Where's that? I wish this was almost less at this point. I'll skip ahead to what I have here. So vaccine identity, they went over that. They're saying, this is directly from the report, it is possible that the vaccination status of employees may become increasingly important form of identification in the future and may impact access to education, leisure activities, travel, and more. So in the report itself, it's broken down. It says there's bullet points, and the one says in 2030, this could mean. It will introduce like a preamble and kind of what their question was about. And then it gives you these points. And then the second is potential labor market implications. So on this, they're saying vaccination data might be more public than in the past and used by unexpected parties, such as insurance brokers and financial planners. It may become common practice for employers to conduct 24/7 health and wellness surveillance of employees, including temperature, stress, physical activity, etc., driving new demand for data privacy policies. They acknowledge that people may advocate for the right to not be vaccinated as a protected ground in the Charter of Rights, or the right to keep their vaccination status private. So they kind of talk about that. They're on these topics. They say in this is what caught my eye, employment laws may need to change to clarify employee vaccination rates. So they don't really tell you how they think they should change. They just introduce the thought, the idea. Employment may be stronger in regions with high vaccination rates. And then it says if the vaccine is successful, there may be an increased interest in pharmaceutical jobs and scientific related research related to the vaccines among Canadians. But I don't know where I fall on that, but I just thought it was interesting. They leave it ambiguous, like employment laws need to change to clarify employee vaccination rights. They kind of go through these topics and everything's kind of vague, but there's a few spots in here that really kind of stick out. One of them was, sorry, back up here, and they talk about another pandemic. This is one of the micro trends under, sorry, it was a setup weird. Under trend 6, finding meaning and well-being, they had a meso trend, they call it, which is a smaller one, smaller trend, and it was called another pandemic. Under that, they said substance abuse may increase as a consequence of the stress and anxiety caused by another pandemic. And it said there could be permanent systems and designs in place to support social distancing. And they're talking about in 2030, this could mean. So I said to you before we went live, it kind of sounded to me like it was related to Agenda 2030 a bit, because they literally tell you in 2030 this could mean, and then they give you the bullet points of what they think it means. But they had another part. There could be a mass small business closures if business owners see no hope. It may become a struggle to attract talent to the hospitality, retail, and restaurant industries, possibly necessitating government incentives to participate in them. So they're even talking about getting government involved in incentivizing the things they've helped destroy through their lockdown approach to COVID. So hospitality, retail, restaurant, like that's what they want to do. Get the government involved. That might help. So they're talking about all these concepts, but it's the way they talk about them. That's like the direct quotes from them. So I just get your thoughts on that. Reading that direct quote, like it may be a struggle to attract talent. They think it might necessitate government incentives to participate in the hospitality, retail, and restaurant industries. And they talk about there could be permanent systems and designs in place to support social distancing.
Yeah, well, of course. I mean, this is all in line with sustainable development. I mean, the end goal around sustainable development is complete and total control, surveillance, and they use this incentive. That's basically just extortion. It's basically going to tell every employee either you take the vaccine, you either socially distance, you either wear this mask, et cetera, or go find a job somewhere else. And then when you get into, of course, the business side of things, it's just more extortion. It's more fascism, where the government is going to dictate through partnerships with the business community that, you will, as a business owner, do this, and this. And if you do, then you will get this, and this. Goodbye free market, goodbye capitalism, which is exactly what they've been telling us they want to do for 40 years, that we were all conspiracy theorists for calling out. So yeah, of course they use prettier words and sort of hide it in language, but yeah, I mean it's this convergence to communism, fascism, and control of every aspect of your life, including your work life.
Yeah, it just, yeah, there's more in here. So there's one under yeah, you think you'll like it. They had a whole
And repeat,
section.
sorry,
Sorry.
Greg, repeat for us who commissioned this report, who provided this.
Yeah, so this is why I gave it so much attention. It was commissioned, or funded by, rather. I'm not sure who could like commission it. It's probably like an internal thing they decided to do, but it does sound like the government has a lot of influence in it because it's supported by the Government of Canada's Future Skills Center, and it's funded by them. So yeah, they're receiving government funding for this study. That's where these questions are coming from. Presumably, the Government of Canada would have some interest in the results, at
Well, you
least.
see, and this is all language that's in line with language that the good folks over at the World Economic Forum are using and Klaus Schwab for the Great Reset when they talk about reimagining, re-engineering, reskilling or upskilling existing employees and positions. So yeah, I mean this is right in line with that, of course.
Yeah, so I think you'll like this one if I find it here. There's what was the trend? Trend to capitalism in question was what they titled it. This is what they have as like their commentary on the question. Capitalism has never existed without pushback, but calls for change continue to escalate amidst growing climate change concerns and the unequal economic impacts of COVID-19. So
I
yeah.
love how they marry the two because the two are the same. That it's the same strategy, the same modeling, the same fear mongering. They're both mechanisms to move everything in this direction.
So they say in the report that the concept of degrowth is focused on ecological goals and defines new metrics of economic progress. It has the potential to create a paradigm shift from a focus of GDP growth to a new system that prioritizes human well-being, environmental sustainability, and economic resilience. Doesn't, again, always generic, doesn't tell you really kind of what it really means by
No
that.
nuts
But
and bolts. No.
so where did it go? Under that, they say potential labor market implications. Wealth distribution policies could provoke high net worth individuals to leave the country, potentially contributing to a loss of talent. So I thought it was interesting that they at least acknowledged that. There is something else I've been talking about through various reports for a while, is that we can't afford to keep shutting down. I don't know when people thought we could just start doing that. They say in this that under the public services come with a price tag. That's what they titled it under one of the meso trends, the smaller trends within that trend. Okay, so it gets confusing. So I'll just refer to the section I'm at. They say that there's going to be, it could mean in 2030 that lower public sector budgets might generate more innovative public-private partnerships or motivate new approaches to taxation. So they're admitting that there's potential at least for lower public sector budgets. And then they say access to public services. I wanted to bring this up because I think you're in rural Saskatchewan.
I got to stop you there. Of course, there's going to be less public sector budgets.
Yeah.
There's less income tax. People aren't working. This is all going to be related to universal basic income. Everyone's sitting on their ass except for the privileged few that they get to go to a job they're dictated to go to. And then while they're there, they have to follow all of these dictates, forget about the Charter of Rights and Freedoms and employment standards and you name it. Yeah, absolutely.
They talk about the UBI in here as well. So I have that on my list of discussion points. But are you in rural Saskatchewan, Mark?
I'm in Saskatoon. That's relatively urban. I mean, it's not Toronto or Vancouver, but it's urban.
It's fun. Okay, well, I thought this would be an interesting point for. I thought you were more rural, but anyways, access to public services in smaller communities may become constrained. It says in 2030. It also talks about.
Well, we're already seeing that throughout Saskatchewan, Alberta. The the centralization, moving hospitals out of the smaller towns, moving grain elevators out of smaller towns into these monstrosity grain elevators and inland terminals. So yeah, I mean, we've seen that push to essentially forced migration into the cities and off rural setting. We've seen that for a while, and we'll continue to see it.
Yeah, they talk about another spot in here under the capitalism in question. So they really hammered the idea. This is the one that made me the most uncomfortable, was going through the capitalism stuff. There's a few in there. I got to go through it more, but here's what they said in introducing the topic. Formerly fringe policy ideas such as universal basic income and a wealth tax have been brought into mainstream politics. 50 senators signed an open letter to the Prime Minister calling for a basic income, and the Federal Liberal Party has discussed both policies publicly as approaches to spur Canada's economic recovery. It says adopted policies like UBI may lead to increased entrepreneurial and educational pursuits. So that's what.
Yeah, right.
Now, under potential labor market implications, they say a diminished luxury class. They acknowledge that there may be a diminished luxury class. Thought that was interesting. Could result in reduced demand for high-end goods, services, and real estate. And then they said this, and this gave me chills. Wealth distribution policies could provide high net worth individuals to leave the country, potentially contributing to a loss of talent. So they acknowledge this, but it gets more interesting, because if I go the next spot, when they talk about America versus America, they talk about, they think they're going to gain a bunch of people because of the Canadian dream, as they call it. Sorry, here we are. So they talk about the civil unrest that happened from Trump refusing to commit to a peaceful transition to power. They talk about the George Floyd protest and record a number of guns. And then many companies were taking precautions. However, while social media platforms, they say here it is, ongoing border closures between Canada and the United States could occur. They also say that entrepreneurs, persistent political volatility in the United States could lead to outsourcing of key economic segments to Canada and a brain gain for Canada, as top innovators and entrepreneurs opt to live in Canada, given greater political stability in comparison to the United States. Mm-hmm. So they expect to pick up. I thought it was funny because there's actually reference in the report itself. I can't find it right now, but where it says they refer to it as the Canadian dream. They kind of like reverse the whole American dream thing. And I just thought, that's pretty cocky.
Yeah, because the Canadian dream, I mean, has always been about socialism, Marxism, communism, right? That's what we've always dreamt about. It's always what we've always wanted. So,
well, we talk about this a lot, but I've never had a chance to vote on any of this. They don't even talk about it. They mock and kick people out of the party that bring these things up. And I don't understand how it's still at a point where it's being ignored by the majority of politicians when you have 100 doctors come out and sign against it. You have there's medical papers that are out on the PCR test. We were talking about that a little bit before, but there's so much information out there that it's not like average people coming forward. You have experts that have come forward and are continuing to come forward that continue to get ignored, and then you have elected officials that come forward and they get ignored. And then you see papers like this, and you go, "Well, is it?" You know what I mean? Like how many times is it allowed to be a coincidence before it's not? You have Jason Kenney saying that.
I was just going to mention Kenney. Yeah.
Kenney comes out and he talks about Klaus Schwab. Hey, we all got the book. He sent it to everyone. And so every elected official got this book from this guy. And then I've talked about, we showed through the World Economic Forum and the Young Global Leaders, Klaus Schwab's association, that Chrystia Freeland, Michelle Rempel, and Jagmeet Singh were part of that organization, a bunch of other Canadians in influential positions. You see all these overlaps, and it's not talked about in the mainstream media, even on the mask thing. So there's a court precedent set, at least in Ontario. I'm sure you're aware of the Ontario Nursing Association winning their court challenge against the vaccine or mask policy at St. Michael's. So they had a VOM policy. You don't have a shot. You got to wear the mask through the 6-month influenza season. They won twice. They won in 2015 and they won in 2018 because the arbitrators both ruled that there was insufficient evidence that it protected the patient and the wearer. And then Here we are with the COVID, and COVID particles are smaller than influenza. But apparently none of this matters in the discussion. There's even medical articles when all this started that say masks act as a talisman that give people a perceived sense of safety. It was the NEJM. I think you've seen that study as well. And I've talked about this stuff with people, and I'm a crazy conspiracy theorist. And it's getting to the point where the environment around this from the media and politicians is so toxic that innocent people are getting hurt. It's long past that, but like you can't even go out to the grocery store and shop if you had to without a mask. There's harassment from the general public. I just heard about there is reported on a double lung transplant was refused entry into a hospital because they couldn't wear the mask. So all these things are happening, and as all this is happening, this is kind of how I see things. They're trying to get it through the courts. It took a little bit for people to even start filing, but now they're starting to get through the courts. But it's just the can keeps getting kicked down the road. The same way they moved the goalposts with every measure for COVID, the goalposts or the court dates kind of get moved down, and it takes a long time to get in. So as these things shake out, we're talking people that are months out. Here's your ticket. You can't do this, or that, and it will be 4 months before we'll hear your case where you can voice yourself. That's not justice, in my opinion. And I guess the elephant in the room is, again, how long has the judicial system been underfunded, and why did they ignore it for so long? It's not like it's a new issue. It's been an issue for a long time for it being underfunded for a long time, and all of a sudden now they add in the COVID stuff on top. And I don't know that they're going to get through a lot of the cases. I think they are probably overwhelmed at this point.
Yeah, but I mean, all of this, and you mentioned Kenny, and that's a good example. So all these politicians, all these elected officials, municipally, provincially, federally, they've all, or most of them, there's probably a number of them that are asleep and just content collecting, their paycheck and their pension when they're done. But all the major players in the political realm, at all levels of government, have been completely aware of what's coming, of Agenda 2030, 21. They've known it for as long as it's been around. And then you look at Kenny, he talks out of both sides of his mouth. He sort of denounces the Great Reset and Klaus Schwab. At the same time, today he makes an announcement that they're creating this corridor in northern Alberta where they're going to restrict human activity, and they're going to make this whole corridor wildlands, essentially prohibiting human activity, enormous amount of property, enormous amount of land. Now, Kenny didn't just come up with this out of the goodness of his heart because he's responsible to the environment. Kenny did this because he understands, as part of the greater agenda, this is the things that they're going to do. They've been doing it in BC. Shortly, they'll be doing it in Saskatchewan and Manitoba. And so they all talk out of both sides of their mouth. They all know what this means. And when Kenny denounces 3 occasions now that the Great Reset, he doesn't mention Agenda 2030, not once, even though the two are completely married with each other. So, it's how are we going to force the truth out of them? Well, continually doing what we're doing and getting some of these things into the courts, I guess. But ultimately, it's going to have to be the public, and the people are going to have to revolt. I mean, why haven't any of these things ever been promoted openly to the public? Because they know that if they promoted these things openly to the public, that the public would absolutely revolt against all of this. But it's all done, underhanded. They'll put out little fancy reports like this, and they'll slip it out and say, "See, we showed you guys, but nobody paid attention." Wow, because you guys didn't make it part of the narrative. It wasn't, nobody ever told the truth. And the people that did tell the truth are conspiracy theorists, right? So,
well, on that's that point, we need more media in Canada doing the work of getting the information out, because we're a small outlet, and I noticed that there's a lot now that I know kind of the outlets where people get information from. I see more and more stories come through, and you see what people miss. Like, we report on Randy Hillier requesting an investigation into scientific fraud and public health policies. I don't know that that's been picked up by anybody else yet, and that's our biggest story of the year. Um,
Yeah.
But this is the stuff that goes by the wayside. I don't know if this will get reported on. I basically did a very in-depth analysis on this today from my article. There's articles linked for every individual topic. If you want to go through and pick out individual topics, I recommend the article that way. So it's just, there's like all sorts of topics on the 8 trends. Reconciliation was in there. Anti-racism was in there. There's tech discussion. There's one more I wanted to get in, which was digital residence. I talked to you about that. They bring up the UN actually. So they talk about Estonia. I don't know if you're familiar with Estonia's digital ID, or they're doing banking or something like that through digital. But they say in December of 2014, Estonia launched a digital residency program designed to attract global entrepreneurs to use government e-services. That's what it is. With over 50,000 e-residents from 157 countries, allowing 6,000 businesses to incorporate. They go on to note, though, however, deglobalization and a push to support local business may prevent more countries from adapting this type of program. But they say in 2030, it could mean that digital IDs are used across platforms and services. Concept of citizenship. I thought this popped out in Thought Agenda 2030 again. The concept of citizenship may evolve and no longer be tied to geographical place. They say that the United Nations International Labor Organization may become more important to support global workers' rights, and that there may be an increased employer surveillance technology to monitor global teams. So again, they're talking about it pretty directly. I thought that time it wasn't as beat around the bush in that discussion, but that was under, I think, workers' rights under capitalism in question.
Right.
Might have been digital residence, but anyways, it's a massive report.
Yeah, and they've been talking about ID 2020 and digital economy, digital commerce, digital this, digital that. And I mean, that's the direction they're moving everything in. And right up to, digital vaccines, right?
Well, it got to the point where I was reading through this just to summarize some of the stuff I've heard, but they're talking about people may have a need to go out to like public spaces, like public parks, and get in touch with nature. Basically, as they say, increased urbanization increases, and they go through these topics. They talk about the vaccine. They talk about reconciliation. There's the UN talk. UBI's in there. They talk about acknowledging cuts in services to rural areas as well. It's all, you look at Agenda 2030, driving people into the cities. The other one was there's a report in there. They acknowledged the most searched trend, I guess, for phobias in 2020 was social distancing related. So that was in the report as well. I thought it was interesting. They referenced another report, but that's kind of the stuff that just popped out to me. But this is where we're at.
This is all part of, well, I mean, it's relative. They're using the Chinese model on social credit. Everything is connected. Everything is surveilled. Everything is traced and tracked. Everything is connected. Everyone is going to be moved out of the rural settings into these super mega cities, the smart cities, the connected cities, so they can manage every aspect of your life through technology. And it'll be like the wildlings. We'll have to go north of the wall to avoid all this shit. And then we got to fight each other for the scraps that, is left out in the wild. Without any services, without any, this is where we're headed, and I hope people understand that. It's enormous change is coming one way or the other.
I keep waiting for the inflation to get bad, but I think the reason it hasn't, I've noticed it's gone up. I don't know, maybe your audience can chime in on it, but I noticed personally the groceries have gone up and the cost of goods has gone up. Yeah. But that is from the direct result, in my opinion, of printing money that we don't have, is not backed by anything during the shutdown to just lock the nation down for COVID.
Right.
And there's no discussion of, I keep talking about this, but why is there no discussion in the mainstream media about the long-term consequences? Why is there no discussion in the long-term, in the mainstream media about the long-term consequences of locking the nation down, not just physically and mentally, on children, the mandatory masking, that has an effect. What are the benefits? What is the effect? And then the inflation's going to run rampant because you can't print this much money based on nothing and expect it to just go on forever. So I think the only reason it hasn't gone out of hand at this point already is that every country around the world seems to be doing it at the same time.
Mm.
If it was one nation doing it, you'd go, it would be a Greece situation. If you look at the amount of debt that Canada's put up.
Mm. Yeah, and I mean, you're right. At least in part, inflation is directly related to fiat currency and printing money, and it's directly correlated with inflation. But they also use pricing to socially engineer, i.e., gas, fuel, whatever, carbon tax, right? So they want to socially engineer people to not drive as much and to use other means of transportation, but they do it with food too, and they'll rise. The price of meat has gone through the roof. Go and buy some beef. It's insane. I almost don't buy any beef anymore, just because of the cost. It's cost prohibitive if you want to enjoy all the other things that you enjoy. So yeah, I mean, it's social engineering, market manipulation. And they are in control of it all. And, this is what's frustrating to me, especially living in Saskatchewan and next to Alberta, is like, for example, the Cattlemen's Association. They're completely bought off by these globalist interests. They're completely, or extorted, however you want to call it. And these groups don't stand up. Like farmers and ranchers, meat producers should be absolutely screaming from the top of every building that if they want to save their industry. But it's like, it's just church mice, right? It's just, everybody's just, going to take what they can right now while it's still here. And whatever happens in 5 years, 10 years down the road, we'll deal with it then, which will be nothing, right? We'll be eating worms.
I think farmers are very individualistic. I think that's part of it. There's not, maybe they're in their own bubbles and stuff. They got their inner communities, but that's a lot of people in general. And that's part of the problem is this can't be done in a vacuum. As much as people may not like aspects of me or you, if somebody's bringing good information on a consistent basis and they have the right ideas in general about freedom, about liberty, about where the nation should go, you should support them to the best that we can. And it's just crazy. Like I don't know what it was for you that got you started in the politics, but for me,
this.
Well, so was it specifically the globalization stuff?
It was globalism. It was the UN. Yeah, it was the agenda. That's. I mean, that's the only reason I exist on YouTube, really.
Well, it's one of those things that's gone by the wayside, and I think they did a very good job of. Anybody who tried to have a real discussion about it was labeled a conspiracy theorist or a quacker out there, or they just, if they made too much sense, they probably went away, in the sense that social media seems to be controlled nowadays. It doesn't take much to get away from a dissenting voice for a YouTube or a Facebook to get rid of someone. If they can do it with channels that have hundreds of thousands of people, we're long past the point where they care about a small channel like mine or yours.
Yeah, well, and well, I think they do, though, because just out of the blue, this is anecdotal, of course, but I happened to notice somebody had shared a tweet from the World Economic Forum, and so I clicked on to go look at the tweet, and I couldn't see it because the World Economic Forum had me blocked. Now, they didn't block me because I troll them, because I don't pay much attention to them all. Unless I see something that piques my interest, then I'll retweet it with my own interpretation of what they're actually doing. And lo and behold, they had me blocked. So that tells me that, I'm at least over the target. And so I think they do care about what we do. I think at times, I think we actually have more impact than we give ourselves credit for. And so we have to keep doing it, and we have to keep, and so as we talked about before we started, one of the ways, and it's only a piece of the puzzle, is we have to start bringing lawsuits. And I spoke to somebody about a potential lawsuit I'm looking at in the province of Saskatchewan against the PCR test. Now, the reality is, a court case like that could take, 2 years, let's say, maybe 3 years, maybe 4. Who knows how long it gets stuck in the court process. But regardless, that's almost secondary. A ruling is almost secondary. The fact that we're doing it, and the fact that they'll have to give us attention, they'll have to talk about it, they'll have to talk about why we're bringing this forward, we'll have to raise the issue, we'll have to force the government to answer the questions that are brought through this action. That's more important than the case itself, even, because then it gets people talking, then it gets people aware of what's actually happening. I talked to another guy earlier today about civic politics and municipal politics, and how incredibly important it is for people to get involved in municipal politics, because this is how they're going to institute all of these things. This is how they're putting it in place right now, these policies. It's incredibly important that people get involved at the local level, at the community level, and start talking with each other and informing each other of what the hell's going on. And so I think they are scared of that. I think they do recognize that grassroots as a problem, and ultimately it's the only solution, is bringing people together and identifying and creating awareness, so then they can act, so then they can come together and maybe elect some people into city councils that will oppose this stuff. I mean, right now we're sitting in Saskatoon, and our full city council, all of them, are bought into Agenda 21 2030. There's no opposition. It's a singular narrative, and they're going hard with it. And that's our fault. That's our fault, because nobody pays attention, nobody understands, and everyone's going to be looking around. What the hell's going on here? Well, you should have paid attention before the last election and elected some people in there that can oppose this stuff. And that applies provincially and federally too, but the local level is incredibly important.
Well, the most overlooked place in politics is the local municipal level.
Yeah.
And it is. I had a civics teacher way back when that used to tell me, like, it's the most important election you can vote in is actually your municipal election, and it's going to affect you the most. And so he drove that point home for me when I was young.
I think that's the case probably in cities where people don't pay attention and really just ignore it because it's not sexy. But I think once you get outside the cities into some of these rural municipalities, these smaller towns, people are a lot more tuned in, because they know that their lives can be impacted by that reeve, by that small town mayor. So they're a lot more connected and in tune with what's going on. You get into bigger cities, and I mean, nobody cares, because it's just one of those things. I don't know. It's weird. City people are weird.
Oh, that's one way to put it. I've lived both sides of the coin, right? I've lived in the city and I've lived in the country, but I definitely prefer the country. If you grew up in the country, nothing like it. I couldn't. I miss it, and I hate the city so much. And it's not that Kitchener's a bad city; it's just not for me. But if you had to put a cap on this whole agenda, especially just in sight of COVID, the main things to me that keep getting looked over and just ignored. I call it the one and done cycle. So I find media will talk about something that's of importance, mainstream media, but they'll touch on it once and then they move on and hammer certain things over again and again and again, and kind of just touch on stuff. So I think with the mask thing, they've ignored the Ontario Nursing Association, the mandatory, the fact that it's won twice in court against the mandatory masking.
Yeah.
They've ignored the cycle threshold argument, the fact that the creator himself, Kerry Mullis, is against the use for a diagnostic tool for viruses. They've ignored the fact of the medical studies that have come out. I believe it was 3,900 roughly that were tested, PCR tests that were cycled through the thresholds. Anything over 35, less than 3% were actually infectious. Right. So I said to you, I think before we went live, to the Ministry of Health, I put out an email requesting a breakdown of the total cases in Canada and the threshold cycle breakdown. And I said, why don't you include it on the paperwork itself? Why don't you tell the patient that? And I think it's because they know people would pick up on it. If you had a bunch of people getting 38, 39, you tested positive at 40 cycles or 38, I think you would know people would be waking up and questioning it a lot quicker. But anything over 35, less than 3% chance that you're actually infectious with anything.
So here's an example, Greg, and I won't keep you much longer, but in Saskatchewan, we've raised this issue, and we actually dedicated one of our protests to the PCR. And it's been in the media discussion. People want to talk about it in some of the talk shows, which is good. So then, of course, there's lots of talk on social media. So then the Saskatchewan Health Authority comes out with this fact check: COVID-19 PCR testing in Saskatchewan is accurate.
I seen you comment on that.
And I mean, they glaze over everything. They basically just pat themselves on the back and say, yeah, great job. Everyone's doing a wonderful job. Don't look here anymore because, everything's all good. It's a farce. But you know what? It's effective. The masses buy into it and the narrative continues. So, anyways, my friend, thanks for bringing this to light. Where can people find this article, this report that you've done? On the website, I assume?
Yeah, so you can check us out, obviously, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, MeWe, if you're on there. But our articles are all on divergemedia.ca. We do have a little bit of merch. If you're looking for a hat, we're in that market. We can ship across Canada. If you want to support independent Canadian media that's trying to focus on the stories that slip through the cracks, that's what we're trying to do. The things that don't maybe get so much attention, it seemed to work out okay for Blacklock's reporter. If I could do half as good a job as them, I'd be very happy with ourselves. So thanks for having us on, Mark.
Hey, you bet. Keep up the good work, man. Like I said, these independent media is so bloody important. So all the power to you. And, I'll tell my listeners, read their stuff, share their stuff. It's just another independent that's coming at things and telling the truth. So kudos to you. Well done.
Appreciate that. Yeah, no, we've experienced some explosive growth this year. So there's definitely more people sharing our stuff. We appreciate that. Check us out, and we hope to see you on some of our live streams and our videos.
Awesome, thanks, man. Mike. No problem. Yep. Take care. We'll have you back again soon. Ciao.
Sounds good. Bye.
All right. So that was Greg Staley from Diverge Media. They're doing great work. There's only a couple of them. So, resources are thin. Time is thin, but they're doing good stuff. And they're talking about, issues. They're talking about reality. They're talking about truth that nobody else in the mainstream will even touch. So we got to support these guys. We got to support these new media outlets. They're an important piece to the puzzle. So here's what's going to happen now. I'm going to cut this stream off. So it's a dedicated stream to our discussion with Greg, rather than uploading or having it automatically upload as one big 3.5 hour stream to YouTube that people are scared of. We can upload this one at 49 minutes and people will pay attention. So I'm going to cut this one off and I'm going to restart a new one with the Angry Albertan in about 10 minutes. So make sure you come back if you're on YouTube or Twitter. There's nothing on Facebook right now. So make sure when we do come back that you're sharing the link to Facebook. If you have a Facebook account, that would be appreciated. Should be a good discussion with my good friend Josh, the Angry Albertan. I dig that guy. He's I consider him one of my brothers. So yeah, so check it out. We'll be back on in less than 10 minutes, 9 minutes. So ciao for now and talk to you shortly. And I'll just do it. Globalism bad, nationalism good.